And now it's time for all ages. And I have a story of Coyote's troubles. This comes from our Native American traditions. We have many traditions that we draw from, and it's one of our strengths. This one is Coyote's troubles that he actually, grumpy self, causes himself, though he doesn't see it that way. We'll find out. Coyote wakes up and he's very happy that, oh, yeah, oh, good, I'm awake now, yep, oh, I'm going to have a day to myself. Wait a minute, the birds are singing. Tweet, 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 tweet. Caw, caw, caw. Oh, what a mess. Oh, I don't need that. So he goes, looks around, thinks, where can I go? And of course, Rabbit is jumping all over the place. Maybe eating now and then, but a lot of running and jumping. Oh, ridiculous big feet that Rabbit has got. This is crazy. So off he walks, and right over there is Moose, of course, making his squish, squish, squish with his big mouth looking for grasses in the marsh and going a squash, squash through the mud. And he's got those huge antlers. Who needs antlers like that? Nobody. He should look like me. Coyote. Well, so he walks on down the path. He's going to go find a place that's just for Coyote. Walking down the path, and guess who comes along right away? Hop, 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 hop. Hey, where you going? What you doing? Keeps on walking down the path. Ooh, yeah. It's really fun to go running. You want to run? And Rabbit runs up the hill and runs back to Coyote and says, do you know what's up over that hill? I do. Just walking along the path. Finally, he says, go away. Oh, ouch. That's not very friendly. And the rabbit's feelings are hurt, and he hops away. Good. Coyote's walking along. Oh, there's the marsh. He's going to go through the marsh. And Moose says, hey, Coyote. Want me to show you a path so you can come through the marsh and stay dry? No. He just goes and he starts swimming, and it gets all muddy. He gets grasses in his fur, and it's just a mess. But he doesn't want to talk to Moose, and he says, go away. Moose is like, oh, ow, that hurt. Oh, and Moose turns his back to him and doesn't show him a path. He gets to the other side, and he has to kind of get that mud and those grasses out of his fur. Walking along, he found the spot. This is the perfect spot. It's like a little special place. He sits down. He makes his beautiful fire, because Coyote has the gift of fire. Makes his beautiful fire. And he sits down. He's going to dance. He's going to drum. And he's going to yodel, because he has these great songs. And the birds start in. He goes, what? Birds? Tweet, tweet, tweet. Twitter, Twitter, Twitter. Twitter, Twitter. Gaw, gaw. Go away. What? That hurts. And bird and the other birds all fly away. You're not my friend. So Coyote settles down, all ready to, and what was he going to do again? Oh, yeah, he was going to play his drum. Drum. Except he couldn't remember any rhythms. Oh, well, that's okay. He's going to dance. He couldn't remember any steps. Wait, I can dance. Oh, well, he's going to yodel. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. What happened to me? What happened to all of my gifts? He's a little scared and worried now, but at least he's got the fire, and he curls up near the fire to stay warm, and he goes to sleep. In his sleep, the goddess, the white buffalo woman, comes to him and says, I see that you're scared and worried. What is wrong, please, Coyote? Oh, I don't have my gifts anymore. I can't sing. I can't dance, and I can't play the drum. I don't know what to do. Oh, didn't you know that your friends are the spirits of the drum, the dance, and the song? And you've pushed them out of your life and out of your heart. And if they're not in your heart to inspire you, you're not going to have those gifts. Oh, and he's now worried about fire. Maybe fire will go away too, so getting pretty worried. Oh, she said, well, I just thought I'd let you know. And she leaves. Goddess, a white buffalo woman leaves. He wakes up in the morning. You know how you wake up sometimes and you know you've had a really interesting dream, but you can't quite remember it. Trying to remember this dream. He can't remember it. And the birds start singing and he thinks, oh, isn't that nice? I should listen to the birds. I like it. Good morning, birds. Tweet, 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 caw, caw. And he's very happy. Oh, good, they have good music to give me. And he walks, thinks, I'm going to walk back home again. He's walking, and of course he comes to the marsh, and Moose happens to be there going swish, swish, pulling up things and chomping. And he said, good morning, Moose. I'm really sorry I was mean yesterday. I wasn't very nice, and I feel bad about that. Moose says, thank you for telling me. He said, Moose, would you mind showing me a dry way to come across the marsh? And the moose says, yeah, this way. So Coyote trots across in the dry way to the marsh, and he comes to where Rabbit is. He said, Rabbit, don't go away. I'm really sorry I was mean yesterday, and you are my friend, and I hope you'll still be my friend. Rabbit says, oh, good, yeah, you still want to see what's over the hill? He said, not right now, but I thank you so much. And along they walk, and he makes his gift of fire, which is still there. He sits down, and he starts drumming on the log, and he starts dancing along the way, and he lifts his voice and he yodel, yip, yip, no, yip, yip, woo, oh, it's all back again. Coyote never forgot that his gifts came from his friends who entered his heart and gave him love and inspiration. Thank you. We have these wonderful members of our congregation up here because they were our delegates to General Assembly this year. As you know, it's that wonderful UU gathering from all over the world where many things get decided and many workshops are offered. It's an extraordinary experience. They're here to offer their experiences. First, we're going to have Joyce Porter speak.
Thank you, Jeanne. This was my best General Assembly because it was my first General Assembly. While I love a good business meeting, the idea of 3 hours of general session first thing in the morning was frankly grim. How much caffeine would I need to endure that? In fact, the time flew due to a diverse slate of strong speakers and moderators, compelling yet brief presentations, well-timed breaks, and voting updates interspersed with announcements, music, and humor. The intangibles include the caring, the shared sense of community and of purpose. The GA committee walked the talk and ensured that we were cared for with easy access to problem resolution. Each morning, we received updates from the various care teams, including safety, covenant, accessibility and inclusion, and chaplain teams, ensuring accountability and transparency in caring for our physical, mental, and emotional needs. This care included acknowledgement that in this post-pandemic world, we have varying needs for personal space. We had the option to share our comfort level by tagging our name badges with either a red, yellow, or blue circle. My yellow circle reflected my comfort with 3 feet of space. A red circle meant 6 feet. A blue circle meant hug me. Free on-site tests were provided, and the few who tested positive shifted to online participation. It took a bit of courage, this month's theme, to attend such a large gathering at the first post-pandemic GA, but my concerns were quickly alleviated. The musical entertainment was superb, both during the day and a special evening entertainment. Transportation to the assembly and throughout Portland was free and accessible, thanks to Portland's Max Rail system. Coffee, pastries, and lunch were available on site, with walkable access to other restaurants in the area. And there were those new UU friends you kept running into. Craig from New Hampshire, and the insightful conversations that we had on reparations, contested elections, and the best food trucks in the area, very important. Or my morning bus mate, Kira from North Carolina, whose church was about 60 minutes from my former UU church in Winston-Salem. And speaking of running into, one morning, while waiting in line for coffee, a fellow UU, out of breath, asked if she could go ahead of me to get a beverage for her speaker. We saw each other twice that day. She thanked me profusely both times. The following day, she saw me in the exhibit hall as I was looking for a particular booth. When she asked if she could help, I told her I was looking for the Church of the Living Fellowship. She said, "I head that program." What are the odds? There were dozens of courses online, virtual, and on demand. While all that I took were inspiring, 2 of them deeply resonated. I was drawn to the course, Breaking Through Class Barriers to Build Community. Classism has long been on my cultural radar. Classism was defined as assigning more or less value to people, according to their socioeconomic class, income, education, wealth, status, position, power, and aspirations. When I heard that defined, I thought of that age-old question that we often ask newcomers. What do you, they, she, he do for a living? Intentionally or not, that question invites judgment, reveals nothing about character, and I stopped asking that question years ago. We identified our socioeconomic class at age 12 and how that affected our dreams, our aspirations, and the opportunities we believed we could or could not take advantage of. We were asked to think about what messages we received growing up about the classes of other people and how those messages shaped our worldview. We were also asked how class plays a role in our congregations. Do all classes represented have a seat at the table, in our committees, in our boards, in our decision-making? And how do people of privilege, which identifies many of us, become class allies? The UUA is providing programming through social media, such as Facebook and Instagram, and the Organizing for Change workshops and consultations, and on the website. Simply Google UUAClassconversations.org to learn more. Another powerful course was the Radical Message of Jesus Today, sponsored by the UU Christian Fellowship. As a for-gospel Christian myself, I'm often in the minority in environments outside of the New England area, where Judeo-Christian influence remains strong in UU fellowships. I was delighted to hear the words of Jesus, to sing familiar hymns of compassion and promise, to hear scriptures of caring for the poor, the afflicted, and the disenfranchised. UU values in a Christian setting. There were many tears as dozens of us, notably many people of color, took communion from UU Christian ministers. It was my first communion since I left the Baptist Church in 1972. It was my X-Files moment. Others are out there. The experience is one I'll never forget. If you've never been like me, or you haven't been in a while, I hope you'll strongly consider attending the GA next year, either in Pittsburgh live or virtually. I guarantee you'll leave richer for the experience.
I'm Debbie Mytels, and been active in this church for over 20 years now, which is a great blessing. As some of you know, I had planned to spend more than a week in Oregon this past June, taking my sister Sally from Southern California with me to visit our other sister, Bryn, who lives in Corvallis, Oregon, and then going to Portland for the 5 days of GA. But we'd no sooner arrived at Bryn's house than the next morning she comes out and says, "I feel sick. I've thrown up all night." Well, we ended up giving her a COVID test, and although I didn't know that throwing up was a symptom of COVID, I learned that it was because she tested positive. So Sally and I were stuck with the conundrum. Should we, stay there and get sick for sure, or should we go to the Portland hotel and quarantine and maybe get sick, or head back home to quarantine there? So we decided to leave in the morning. So this GA trip began with disappointment since both Sally and I had been looking forward to it. But fortunately, the reason that we were able to get a lot out of it was that it was all set up as a virtual GA as well. And we were able to cancel our hotel reservation without a fee and flew back home to my house to wait out that 5-day quarantine. Sally is also part of a very small congregation in Hemet, which is a town in Riverside County. And she was hoping to meet with some people from the UUA who could help share ideas on how to grow a small and aging congregation. And it was great that we were actually able, through the online information that was available, to set up a personal individual conversation with the UUA staffer who works on membership development. And that was able to be a connection that was made quite easily. We had an hour to talk with this woman, which was great. Anyway, this was going to be my third GA, and having gone to the first one in Portland back in 2015, which was the year that the Supreme Court declared that gay marriage was legal. What a celebration that was at GA that week. And Sally and I had also gone to the GA in Spokane in 2019 when Peter Hartzell and I were part of a team that worked together to draft an action of immediate witness to support the Green New Deal. So I was fairly familiar with the way GAs were organized, what we could learn at workshops, and how inspiring the major lectures would be. And of course, the wonderful music that the GA choir would lead us in. Imagine a hall full of thousands of people singing joyful, spirited lyrics to a unifying beat. It's always just an amazing vibe. So it's disappointing to miss that in-the-room musical vibe and the conversations with like-minded strangers like those that Joyce mentioned over lunch and during workshops. But I found that the online experience was also significant, and I want to share some of the ideas that came through about some new directions in our Unitarian Universalist movement. And I want to finish up this little reflection with some quotes from our UUA president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. Her extraordinarily honest and insightful remarks left a deep impression on me, probably the highlight of the whole GA experience, actually. And I revisited them this weekend by going back to the website and looking them up. You can listen to it. It's about a 25-minute talk and really worth time. But before I talk about what she said, I'd like to identify two changes that I'd first noticed 3 years before in Spokane that were now very evident at this GA. The first was a shift away from traditions, and secondly, an intentional effort to involve many more people of color and people with greater gender diversity in the UUA leadership, with the idea that that would carry out into our broader membership as well. These changes were evident in multiple aspects of the gathering, from the resolutions and the bylaw changes that we voted on, to the wide diversity of speakers, and to the tradition-busting method by which the Ware lecturer, Ibram X. Kendi, shared his views during an interview, not a lecture, with Susan Frederick Gray. That was really refreshing. In the past, one of the main preoccupations at GA was always the floor debates over resolutions, these actions of immediate witness, as it's called. People would line up at 3 microphones on the main floor. One was pro speakers, another for con speakers, and one in the middle for points of clarification or personal privilege. Well, during the Portland GA, I remembered that when the moderator apparently misconstrued a pro speaker's remarks, and those who'd lined up behind that mic rushed over to the middle mic to point out his mistake. It looked like rival armies, moving their forces around the field. And the tension was kind of like that. It was so high that the 10-minute break was called for, which of course meant that the time for discussing the AIWs was used up with these hijinks. And one of the other AIWs had to be dropped from consideration. Some people clearly began to feel that this tradition of arguing the fine points of resolutions was a hindrance to the really significant work of growing into a movement that would attract a broader diversity of people who share our values. So by GA 2022, One of our resolutions was to authorize a major overhaul of the UUA's bylaws, and another was to set up a different process for planning the following GAs. And the conversation was shortened by allocating a limited number of speakers and a reduced time frame for discussion. So instead of using the time for what some might consider quibbling over resolutions, new sections were added to the agenda. One was values and sources of inspiration, and another was theological context. The values presentations were done via a series of video clips watched by those of us online as well as those seated in the hall in Portland. One of the speakers was a young woman who talked about a new mantra being heard at UUA meetings. "Nothing about us without us," she said. This underscores an intentional effort to include marginalized people in all sorts of conversations among UUs. Another speaker in this series of videos was the Reverend Bill Sinkford, a former president of the UUA. And he said, "We have imagined our principles and our covenant in ways that have been fundamentally individualistic rather than collective." And he challenged us to think more about the holistic rights of communities and ecosystems, and not to take a libertarian-type perspective. Another way in which this GA took a stand in support of differently abled people was that each speaker came to the podium, they would go through a self-description, presumably for people who could not visibly see them. For example, one woman said, "My name is," and I forget what it was, but "my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a large white woman with light gray hair and big black glasses." Others would even describe the style and color of their clothing. This was something I'd not seen before at any such gathering. Well, since the third day of this GA was also the day that the U.S. Supreme Court announced the final decision in the Dobbs case about abortion, there was a strong undercurrent of emotion that also came through very clearly to those of us watching even remotely on our computers. Susan Frederick Gray began the morning by saying, "I'm roiling between anger, heartbreak, and fear." She wiped away tears as she vowed to continue what may be the fight of many years to win back bodily autonomy. Then that would be a fight that leaves no one behind, she said. And then she called up to the stage Tessa Ellis, a UUA staff member who identified herself as a short, middle-aged black woman with a curly bun on the top of my head. And Tessa spoke about how she'd been a college-bound honor student in high school and found that she was pregnant. She felt fortunate, however, that she had been able to exercise her right to an abortion at that time. "It's unimaginable," she said. "Now what may happen to my daughter, to my nieces? We must stand up to the patriarchy." So while these themes of moving beyond tradition and intentionally creating diversity were evident throughout the GA program, UUA President Susan Frederick Gray's talk on the first day emphasized that these are necessary changes in our changing world. She acknowledged that they're not easy changes, but stressed that they are essential to meeting the needs of our time. And if we are successful in making this shift, our movement will grow into its promise. She defined our current time as what she called a liminal moment between what has been and what is not yet. We are, she said, in the churn of change, where systems and practices, I lost my word, where systems and practices, where's page 4? Excuse me. Where systems and practices that we've relied on are breaking down. In times of loss and uncertainty, there's a risk that fear will dominate and cause us to cling to the status quo and systems that no longer serve us. But let us remember, she said, that we are not a people of fear. We are a people of faith, of imagination and possibility. We are a living tradition. And she went on to remind us of the values we profess. If we do not commit ourselves to dismantling systems of oppression within ourselves and our society, we cannot love the values that we say we love. The values of human dignity, justice, compassion, democracy, truth, and peace. And this commitment is rooted in our theology, a theology which affirms the truth that no one is outside the circle of love, and that liberation is only possible when everyone is free. She went on, and I really do encourage you all to listen to that talk. It was so inspiring. But she ended by saying, to practice deeper solidarity and partnership with deeply impacted communities, and to create more joy and celebration, knowing that this is a source of power, of resilience, and of the imagination that we all need, that our world needs. We were meant for joy, and joy feels like love, and it moves with freedom. We were made for this moment. Thank you.